Welcome back, everyone, to Figuring Out the Formula. I'm your host, Kyle. I'm here with Chandler and Patrick, as always, as every single episode beforehand, and this one. Crazy, right? Um, we're going to jump right in. This past weekend was our first race of the 2024 season. We just released our preseason episode on Monday. Um, it was going to be earlier during the preseason, if you will, but Chandler decided that he wants to get married this year. So the three of us, along with some other friends, we were on a bachelor trip. A lot of fun. Um, we kept it going, so we'll raise one up to Chan. Cheers.
Salud.
And yeah, the three of us, we got to watch the qualifying and races together. It was a great time. But as I said, this was our first race of the year, so there were some things that happened. We'll get into that in a little bit. But before the race started, Chandler, talk about some of the drama that we saw from preseason to the first race.
Yeah, so what we'd actually discussed a little bit of this on the preseason episode, and at the time of recording, were not sure of how the Christian Horner investigation was going to turn out. To kind of pick up from where we last left off, the last episode, the next day after we recorded, the case was dismissed. I don't want to say any charges or anything, but after the complaint was dismissed, as the independent investigator said that there was nothing going on.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Independent is the key word. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice and clean if that's where the story ended. It'd be a real who can say situation. Unfortunately, that's not where this situation ended, and it gets a lot messier. Is that no less than probably, I'd say, 2 hours after this verdict was handed down, or this statement was issued, somehow multiple people in the media, I believe it was mainly British media folks, as well as members of Formula One staff, the FIA, more people at
team
Red Bull,
principals.
yeah, other team principals in Formula One were sent anonymously this Google Drive server logbook, if you will, of screenshots of WhatsApp messages, pictures, documents, I guess. Basically sent a lot of stuff. And the reason I say I guess is that because since it was mostly in United Kingdom and Britain, there's a law in Britain that if any of that was leaked by the media, on whether it be social media, on their news outlets, British law is a lot more strict in terms of, I guess, slander, libel, whatever you want to, defamation. So we didn't really get to see much of it as the public because the British media and most of the team principals were pretty tight-lipped on it. Don't know what it was, but it just kind of makes you think somebody really, really, really wants Christian Horner out. And it's just kind of mind-blowing that someone's going to this extreme. Now, Kyle, I think you have an idea of, you can kind of take us on an idea of who do we have as possible suspects of people that would like Christian Horner out of Red Bull?
So, I mean, there's a shit ton, obviously. They're destroying the competition right now, but there's one that doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like, there are reports that Max Verstappen's dad, Jos, is like, I mean, head butting, Christian Horner. Like, it's literally a Maury episode, or Jerry Springer episode. They're fighting. Jos Verstappen is going onto the media, like news, sports shows, he's doing every media tour he can right now, and basically just taking a giant shit right on Christian Horner's face. I mean, if he takes any more shits on Christian Horner's face, Christian Horner's going to be a Spice Girl. You know what I mean? Like, not his wife.
Not Ginger Spice.
Yeah, I don't know what it maybe a little bit of paprika, but well, I digress. Pat, do you think like Max's dad is just jealous of him, or like what the fuck? Like, your son is right now on a roll. He's a 3-time, about to be 4-time.
You would think that someone in that position would just be happy for their kid and, wouldn't want to steal the spotlight. But like, if you're new to F1, Max Verstappen's dad is living vicariously through his kid. This is not something we haven't seen before in F1. There was actually about a decade ago, a lot of tension with Lewis Hamilton and his dad when he was really young, where he literally kicked his dad out as being his agent. But this is like an extreme level of like jealousy and power grabbing and everything, which I think I was reading that some of it could have been started back in like I guess it would have been 2022 when Dietrich Mateschitz died. He was essentially the controlling owner of Red Bull and running everything at Red Bull corporate. So after he died in around 2022, if I remember correctly, there are a lot of rumors that Christian Horner essentially went to a bunch of British finance institutions and tried to initiate his own British takeover of Red Bull F1, of which people like Helmut Marko did not like that at all. Because if you also don't know Helmut Marko, this guy is an asshole too. He really doesn't seem to care about anybody other than like Max Verstappen. That's about it. And so essentially now this has become Team Marco and Yas versus Christian Horner. And Christian Horner has retained a lot of the backing from the actual Thai Red Bull owners. But, I think, we really just need to wait. But I mean, dude, it's like something new is coming out every day about this that makes it even more juicy.
It's there's
It's
more
insane.
there's more drama with this story than we saw all last year, right? Like, and I don't know if it's because like when successful teams are successful for a long period of time that it's like, okay, well, we have nothing else to talk about with you guys, so we're just gonna either A, invent shit, or B, dig really deep into finding what actually is going on, when in reality, like you have teams like Alpine who they've had drama every season for the last, what, 7 years at least, minimum, if
Yeah.
not more. But they're not winning. In fact, they absolutely suck ass. So we don't really care about those stories, not as much as Red Bull. I mean, you can't even compare the two. So,
I mean, it's like those texts and things like that were on that Google Drive. I mean, I didn't read through them, but I mean, stuff like that could very easily be faked. But also, if that's not faked, Christian Horner is fucking cooked. Like that guy's finished. And plus, I was reading also that whoever put that out also put the victim's name out there that was still in the text and everything. So, I
yikes.
mean, we're not even halfway through this mess. So,
No.
I mean, we're gonna keep
And
tabs on this, but
and
it's
and and what really muddies the waters is that you've got more articles and sources, and of course, this isn't just a singular nation sport. This is a worldwide sport. So the Dutch media is reporting one thing, the French media is
Mhm.
reporting another thing. I've seen articles that say that Red Bull had prepared, like basically had already prepared a statement releasing Christian Horner and met with him and told him that this was going to happen. And Christian basically said, "Nope, I'm getting my lawyers involved. So if you file that, then I'm filing lawsuit." So it's like apparently, if that story's true, then people like in Red Bull were ready to can him, and just because he's ready to, fight back, it's like now nothing happened. It's just it's
Yeah.
weird stuff where we've got the president of the FIA who we'll circle back to him and he's in his own hot water, but the president of the FIA going to Max Verstappen saying you need to verbally back Christian Horner and publicly support him, while Max's own father is the one kind of, I guess, leading the charge against
Yeah. Yeah.
against Christian Horner. So it just really is very muddy waters right now. And then who knows? We may learn a lot more this over the course of the season. We also might learn a lot less by getting a lot more information. So
Yeah.
it's a real who can say situation so far.
Yeah, for sure. But this isn't the only scandal going on right now. I mean, if we jump into a broader scale, not just a team focus, but a broader scale in Formula One, Pat, there's a higher up involved that has his own scandal to deal with. Explain a little bit about what's going on with that.
So from what I've read, and I honestly haven't read a ton into it because I mean,
We can I can
I
get
don't think there's anything
I can
changed
get
about
Chandler
it.
to talk about it if you want.
Yeah, no, I'll spin into him.
Okay.
Um, But essentially, Mohammed bin Salman, the president of the FIA, has been accused of rescinding, I believe it was a 10-second penalty for Fernando Alonso in last year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which, if you guys remember back when we recorded this episode, we all had a ton of confusion as to what was going on with him. And Chandler, I don't know if you read more into this after, if there was any other allegations or anything like that that he had, but that's still pretty something serious to control a race over.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, and now that you mentioned it about when we were recording that last year, that race last year kind of sparked our season-long theme of FIA. What are we doing here? Like, why are we being consistent? Why are we being consistently inconsistent? Kind of makes more sense now. So, Mohammed bin Sulayem, MBS for short, is what he's referred to a lot of times. So, I'm not being cheesy by calling him that. That's a lot of people refer to him as that. But MBS, apparently did not like the result of the penalty. So the penalty was issued, and of course there were appeals. The appeals got denied. However, after the appeals got denied, MBS thought, okay, well, these race directors and race control are going to overturn it. When they didn't overturn it and said, nope, we're keeping it the way it is, then MBS took it upon himself and went to race control and the directors and the stewards and behind closed doors did whatever he did, whether it's threaten their jobs, threaten something else bigger than their jobs. But basically then after the fact, okay, hey, you know what? Even though we said that the appeal was denied, we're actually overturning it. And now there's no penalty. I don't know, going back, I haven't had a chance to look back at, did that affect anything in the grand scheme of the thing over the course of the year? I don't know. But because it was so early now, would be a much bigger story if this was like a Las Vegas Grand Prix, which brings me to the next part of this controversy that MBS has also been accused of and this one I haven't read in as much because this just broke today, but apparently the same whistleblower who kind of filed the investigation for the overturning of the Alonso penalty also filed something basically saying that even after that the F1 and Liberty Sports Media had approved and committed to going to Las Vegas, apparently MBS did not want to race at Las Vegas. I don't know exactly the reason. I have to read more into it of what comes out, but he was pressuring his FIA, I guess, department that goes around and certifying the tracks, just because the FIA as a whole, much bigger than F1, goes and certifies race circuits across the world and gives them a certain grade. And to be able to host an F1 circuit, you have to be grade 1. MBS was basically trying to persuade, whether that's bribe or threaten, this department to not certify Las Vegas, which really would have screwed up the whole schedule and the years in the making of it. Ultimately, he didn't get.
But at the same time, he probably, even though it might be a scandal, they had a fucking cover come loose and destroy a whole Ferrari car. So
also valid.
Like, why not use a legit reason that you could easily just spoon it in there?
It is legit, but it's shady. And when you're dealing with shady people, everything is going to be shady, even if you're in the middle of a wide open field in the summertime. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's like I said, I haven't read as much into that. So we probably will have to circle back after the Saudi Arabia race to see what comes of these two investigations, because very similar to the Horner investigation that we talked about on the preseason episode, we're kind of right in the middle of it. Really, this one we're in the beginning of it because this just dropped late yesterday, early this morning.
Yeah.
So we'll have to kind of stay tuned on that one.
So my thing is, right, like Chandler touched a little bit on, like, this last season we were confused, and the theme last year for the FIA was, can we be consistent, please? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, why did you make this ruling over this ruling, right? Well, something that we talked about a lot last year was cars stopping in the pit lane. So whether that's in practice or in qualifying, the cars would just get to the end of the pit lane and just stop. So no cars could pass them. They would wait till there's like 2.5 minutes left. They'd run their out lap, circle around, and be the last one across the start-finish line to make their qualifying lap, which would eliminate all the drivers behind them. Or what ended up happening, people were trying to pass in pit lane, or there were really close calls between people on flying laps and people who weren't. So flying lap is, you're actually qualifying. Um, this year, the FIA and Formula One decided to make a change. So you're no longer allowed to stop in the pit lane. When I heard that, buddy, I was pleased. Like finally.
Yeah.
We've been asking for it all year. Finally. Well, Pat, unfortunately, these wily old Formula One drivers, they did not stop in pit lane.
They did not stop.
They went very, very slowly. So, I mean, I don't even think any of them had their foot on the gas pedal. I think they were just using the clutch to move forward. So they were going, what, less than 5 miles an hour, just rolling.
Like
So
maybe one.
Yeah. So they technically were not stopped. So they were not breaking the rules. But by God, they were impeding the fuck out of everybody behind them.
It's just dumb, man. Like, we talked about this when this issue first came up last year, and it chaps my ass that this is the highest level of motorsport.
Okay, granddad, who the fuck says that?
It does, dude. It just does. Okay. It's just like $4.13 at Starbucks. All right. Look, you're at the top level of racing and you're just not coming out of the garage prepared. Like, why not just sit in the garage, get everything ready, and then just go? Like,
Yeah.
what? There's literally you're 50 feet away from your garage. There's no difference. Like, if you're not prepared, sorry, pal, like get out of the way of everyone else that is. I just don't get it.
I agree. I believe there's one team though that should never leave the garage, not to qualify, not to race, not to practice, and that's Alpine. They stink, as Chandler said last episode.
I'm telling you, I have not been spot on with an F1 take than as much as I have through at least 1 week. I mean, you say they shouldn't have left the garage and qualified. Did they really even leave the garage and qualify this week?
So
unreal.
So I mean, Chandler's right. They both qualified. So both cars for Alpine, they qualified 20th and 19th. So, Esteban Ocon, he had said like, "Oh, don't worry, guys. I'm riding with you. Like, we can improve." It's like, well, buddy, when you're down here, you can only improve, right? Like, you can't go down because Andretti
there
was
is
not
literally
accepted.
nowhere else but up.
Yeah, so I mean, they're taking Haas's strategy by setting the lowest goal possible. That way, when you don't reach it, it's not going to hurt as bad. Just a spoiler here, they qualified 19th and 20th, and they finished the race, both cars, out of 15 or lower. So, I mean, it makes my heart happy.
Good.
But
yeah, I mean,
it also fucked up someone's retirement and someone's insurance because there's a couple people that are no longer working at Alpine.
Yeah. So Alpine has become a revolving door of investors / employees. Most notably of the latest, the late great Otmar Snafsauer. That was butchered, but you know what? Just like his tenure, it was cut short. Mr. You can't expect to get 9 women pregnant just to have a baby in a month. Anyhow, the new technical director, as well as the head of aerodynamics, I don't have their names in front of me, both resigned, which we had actually been hearing post-testing, it was like the car is really, really bad, and we're hearing that some engineers might be on their way out. When you say engineers, you're thinking, okay, someone like maybe a head of aero, whatever, but a technical director resigned after one race. It was like, peace out. I'm going back to F2 and where all the cars are the same and I just got to find the fastest driver. He's out. And then as a kind of a result of those 2 main departures, Alpine released today their restructuring. So they're actually going to have 3 technical directors that are all on the same level. So it's really like they have a head of aero, a head of suspension, a head of powertrain, but all three of them are on equal levels and just report directly to the team principal. There's no
Which
technical director. How that's going to work out, I don't know. I'm just really waiting for. I kind of want to see. I guess this is Comedy Central's spoof of Wrexham United with Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney's ownership of a sports team. I don't know how this is going to work. It can't get worse.
Yeah, I was
at
gonna
the
say
same
my
time,
take.
I don't think it can get much better this year.
I was gonna say my take is what I already said. They can only go up. So if they're worse, then they're worse, right? They still have 0 points. So what are they gonna have next week? 0 points again?
Yep.
Maybe, but at least they don't have negative. That's not a thing, so that's good.
That's right.
That was pretty much all the stuff that we saw before the race, right? Like we touched on a good portion of the scandals. I mean, those are always fun to deal with. But moving into the actual race part of the race weekend, during qualifying, there wasn't a whole lot. It was pretty non-eventful. But to top it out, we had Max, who qualified on pole, followed by Charles Leclerc, and then George Russell. So a little bit a little part of me, I was like, oh shit, Checo's not even starting off the season hot. Like this ain't good, you know? I was like, this ain't good for him. So, luckily that ended up not being true, but we'll get into that later. So, like I said, it was Max, then Chuck, and then George. Into the race though, we had some things that were pretty noteworthy. Let's go ahead and start out with Hulkenberg and Stroll. Taylor's oldest time. Them boys, they're spending it with like daddy's money, except one is Gene Haas, who, I mean, he's got plenty of money because he don't pay his taxes.
Allegedly.
Thank you. And the
I
other
knew it was
one,
coming. I was quick on the trigger for that.
yeah, I appreciate that. And then the other one, daddy's money, and he just doesn't give a fuck about anything or anyone. Pat, what is your thoughts on that accident that happened with Hulkenberg and Stroll?
It's a tragedy, like the definition of a tragedy, because
That
there's
was
actually
that was way sadder than I thought you were going to say.
there's a third party involved in this crash. Valtteri Bottas had one of like the fastest starts on the grid for this race, and he had already made up like 5 or 6 places, and then he just makes this bonehead mistake trying to like dive through the middle, turn 1, lap 1, which is always a recipe for disaster. Hits Hulk, hits Stroll. Stroll luckily recovered. Hulk had to go get a new wing, of which I don't know why Haas didn't change it when he picked up damage.
Yeah.
And then, after that, Haas and Valtteri were pretty much screwed considering how bad their cars are. Race incident, nobody really deserves to get penalized. Just kind of, it is what it is. But
yeah, it still sucked.
It just sucked to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and of course, race one of the season, turn 1 of the season.
A Haas
for it, yeah. But also, we don't flag it. We don't have a safety car. Okay, I kind of you talked about it as like after that, in terms of any change ups as wrecks or anything. I don't know if it's a interesting tidbit that I know we discussed on Sunday was that it was the first time in Formula One history that the opening race had 0 retirements,
which is crazy.
Wild to me that in the history of the sport that we didn't have. And I want to say I don't know if it was the first one to have any. We didn't have a safety car, didn't have any red flags or anything like that. So nope. I don't know if that was the first time ever, but first time for no retirements, which is wild.
Yeah, for sure. So last episode, we talked about Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari next year. Well, that leaves Carlos Sainz as basically the odd man out, right? Like he's a lone wolf on Ferrari because he knows this isn't his team next year. So during the race, we saw Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc fighting each other. I mean, nonstop. Both of them were bitching about whenever team orders came in, oh, let him pass, he's faster. Or then the pit cycles came out one way or the other. Oh, why'd you let him go first? Or, you know, just bullshit drama between drivers. And then it ended up bringing itself out onto the track where they were racing very, very close, like to the point where I'm like, well, these motherfuckers are about to wreck each other. That's a great start to the season. Let's go. But Chan, nothing came from it. You know, they ended up working itself out. But I was like, for a minute there, I was like, oh shit, this is this is gonna be something we need to talk about for sure.
And
But
and to me, the funniest part of it all was I actually looked at Pat whenever we were watching this live, and we said, "I wonder what Frederick Vasseur is doing on the pit wall." And it looks over, and he's just drinking. He's just sitting there watching the race. He's drinking his boxed water while he's just sitting there drinking that, just watching this go down. And he just calm, cool as a cucumber, Vasseur. Kudos to him on letting him race. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen him. He said, y'all can race by all means.
Yeah. Until they have a crash, then maybe they'll, you know, reevaluate. But
that's right.
Reevaluating is something that this team really needs to do. Williams, I mean, to be honest, we were very impressed with the Drive to Survive episodes of Williams. We talked about that last episode, but James Vowles, he's doing a hell of a job. And they wanted to do some advancements this year. So one of them being a brand new steering wheel. So in Formula One, the steering wheel is the brains behind your car, right? Like you can adjust brake balance, you can adjust all sorts of power modes, engine, like anything you can imagine, you can adjust on the steering wheel. It also has a LCD screen on it, or LED screen, whatever it is. There's a screen on it that gives you all your information. Well, prior to this season in the Williams car, it was always mounted on the car. The screen was. Well, this year they decided to advance it and put it on the actual wheel itself. Well, Pat, we saw a huge issue with not just one, but both cars for Williams. Explain a little bit about what I thought was probably the scariest thing we saw during the race, starting with Logan Sargent.
Yeah, so we all kind of were like, oh, what did this man do now? Because we saw Logan Sargent coming in through turn 4, and he just goes straight off the track instead of turning. Like it's a hairpin turn. You can't really take it wide or anything like that. And we were all just kind of like, you know, what did he do now? And it turns out that Logan Sargent's steering wheel in the middle of the straight started adjusting his brake balance all the way to the front. I think it had adjusted it up to like 90% higher.
It was 98%. It went from, what was it, like 15?
15% to 98%.
And it was like plus 36 brake balance.
Yeah. And so, I mean, as soon as he tapped the brakes, he just locks up and keeps flying. And we were like, oh no, like, is the car done? Whatever. And,
yeah.
And I guess he opened up the task manager and rebooted it because he at least got back on track. But then, you know, just a little bit later in the race, we start to see Alex Albon panicking because his steering wheel just keeps blurting out that they're having cooling issues. And the Williams pit wall is coming in seeing the same thing, but it's a bit tough to tell. I don't know if, you know, they came out later and said if it was actually some major cooling issue with Albon's car or if it was this steering wheel just having a seizure in the middle of the race and thinking that it's overheating.
Yeah, and I know that on top of that, I don't know if this was an issue for Logan's car, but on Albon's car, they asked him, they said, we need you to change some of the settings. And he was like, I can't, this screen is too bright. Like, I think the brightness went all the way up too.
He couldn't see it.
Yeah. And in a day race, it's probably fine. But in a night race, it's probably just so bright that it's kind of just this, you know, white light in your face that you're just really not only just not seeing the screen, but you're worried about driving with the light in your eyes.
So it's not about seeing the screen. So since this was a night race, he could see the screen perfectly fine. But since the screen was so bright, he couldn't see the knobs on the steering wheel that are not backlit. So he couldn't see where the numbers were to turn these dials or flip these switches. That's why it was an issue, because it was that bright. Well, both of these issues stem from the steering wheel. So I guarantee you the first upgrade is not aero, it's not power, it's getting the steering wheel figured out and getting it to where it's safe. Because can you imagine you're you're at Spa and the
Oh,
brake balance just shifts in the middle of, a rouge,
God.
like that's a deadly scenario. So I hope that they get that worked out really quickly, because that's not good for anybody. But moving along, another terrible incident. We talked about Valtteri Bottas having just shit luck at the beginning of the race. Well, he was on my, what are we calling it, grid rival? He was on my grid rival lineup. So I was following him even though he was towards the back. He was moving up here and there. And then all of a sudden I look on the TV screen and he's pulling into the pits. Okay, no problem. Okay, 5 seconds goes by. What the fuck is going on? Okay, 10 seconds goes by. Is he alive? Like, did he pass out? What's going on? Oh, 30 seconds hits. Okay. Oh, we're at 50 now. We got to almost a minute long pit stop. And basically what had happened was the gun, so to take the wheel off, you got your gun. Yep, you like that. And then put the wheel on and then you do it again. But unfortunately there was no, so basically he just got fucked. And then the pit guy, the wheel man was just like Ricky Bobby. He didn't know what to do with his fucking hands. It's like, bro,
Yeah.
get a fucking backup gun. Come on.
yeah. This is not the first time Valtteri's got issues with a front left wheel
Yeah.
being issues. Which I don't. For those not to go too deep into the archive books, is that when he was at Mercedes, there was a wheel where the lug nut was basically fused on. And what I did not know until this week, reading about it, was that it just so happened that exact tire, prior to the race, I believe that was Monaco a couple years back.
Yep.
Tom Holland, Spider-Man, was in the Mercedes garage and just picked up a tire just to take a picture with it, dropped said tire on the lug nut, and then come to find out after they did the research and did the backside, that was the tire that the lug nut malfunctioned
That fucked
on.
up, yeah, for Mercedes.
Monaco
Yeah.
on Valtteri Bottas's car. So the curse of Tom Holland reignited itself for Valtteri this year, which I just thought was kind of a funny tidbit.
Yeah, for sure.
He had the longest pit stop ever because that Monaco pit stop. I think it was technically like a day and a half of a pit stop or something like that.
That's such bullshit. Yeah.
And then
stop the fucking clock.
And then he's got this. I mean, he's got to just hate coming into the pits at this point.
Still shorter than NASCAR stops. So I mean, but let's move on to some more teammate drama, right? Like, I'm not gonna say their corporate name, and that's my promise to you viewers and you listeners. I will never say their corporate name, but I will call them Racing Bulls. Or Toro Rosso. So Toro Rosso, Red Bull's B team, has Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo as their drivers. Well, Daniel Ricciardo is just happy he's in Formula One right now. I don't think, I know he wants to get to Red Bull, but I don't think he's just waiting, right? Yuki Tsunoda is just an angry little man. Well, Cham, what happened at the end of the race? I mean, I didn't even notice this until you guys sent me a video, but it's like this greedy little gremlin needs to just fuck off and go back to Japan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, some are calling him at the F1 title intro where he's just kind of staring off to the corner. Some are calling him the mannequin this year, but we don't go to, before we jump all the way to the end of the race. During the race, the Tide DuPont Wells Fargo 24 cars of Racing Bulls, they instituted team orders to let Daniel Ricciardo in front of Yuki. Yuki was very on brand and dropped about 7 or 8 cuss words over the radio of why is this happening, blah, 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 whatever. Anyhow, the race was over with, so Ricciardo was ahead. Yuki took his frustrations out by, on the cool down lap, speeding up and coming within inches of wiping out both cars in the cool down lap. I don't know why. He kind of, and the radio just said, they talked with him. They said, all right, you're P13, I believe is what he was, but he's like, you're P13. You know, just bring it on home. We'll discuss more in a briefing. And he just kind of was like, yeah, whatever. And then immediately speeds up to Ricardo and then cuts in right off of him. And then on Ricardo's radio is he's just kind of going through the motions and was just, he was like, he actually, before he started, he dropped a couple cuss words here or there, but it was just like, you know what? I'll save it. I'm sorry for putting this over the airwaves. We'll
Yeah.
discuss this in our briefing later. So good on Ricardo for showing maturity
Yeah.
of the two drivers, but Yuki and his little 5 foot nothing self, like almost wiped out two, like Coca-Cola of 600, Pennzoil. Car ran real good.
Yeah. Yeah. Either way,
Yeah.
whatever their fucking corporate name is, I'm not going to say, I hand on the Bible, I will not say it. But Yuki just forgets that he's not good enough to pull this kind of shit. He really isn't. He was this close to losing his seat to Liam Lawson last year.
The
So
moment Honda's out of this in 2026
he's gone.
is the moment that Yuki's out of Formula One.
And honestly, it might even be before that. Because if he pulls this shit that he pulled this weekend, I'm not saying he's going to be fired mid-season because he's good enough to where he can hold his seat.
He's no Nick
But he
DeVries,
will
let's
not
be
be.
real.
He will not be re-upped, if you will. But I digress. We'll move on. That was towards the end of the race. Well, the end of the race happened, and it's a tale as old as time. Max Verstappen wins the first race of 2024.
Grand
So
Slam, we might add. A pole position, fastest lap, and the race win by what I think 28 seconds.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, he lapped everybody up until 10th place. It's absurd. But I was asked over the weekend, why do you guys watch it being Formula One? So why do you watch Formula One if you already know who's going to win? Well, there's 19 other cars that are battling. And so you never really know what could happen. You could have someone's brake bias go fucking haywire in the middle of the race. You could have a 56G impact into a wall. You never really know. And that's what I think got us hooked and what has kept us hooked into watching this kind of racing. The end of the race happened. Max won. Coming in second place, we had Checo. So I said earlier I was a little worried. He didn't qualify great, but would this be his comeback year? Is he going to keep his seat? This is going to be the narrative for the whole season, right? Like what's going on with Checo? Because Max is going to win the title. If you guys have any other opinions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so Max first, Checo second, and then Carlos Sainz, he came in third. So the lone wolf, he's racing. And I like to see this side of Sainz because he's just not giving a fuck. He's just going out there and going as quickly as possible. So I think as long as Ferrari stays committed to him, maybe he could compete for some wins this year. Not the title, but maybe he can compete for some wins. Mm-hmm. Speaking of wins, I would love to jump into me winning this week, but first I'm going to shout out Chase. So Chase, he joined our Grid Rival League. It's figuring out the formula, just like the podcast. It was a great first week. A lot of confusion, if I'm being honest, like how it works and the money and all that, because it was our first time as well. But it was great to do that. I know I won some points. I think everybody. I think the three of us. I think we all won some money or whatever. But
yep.
Chase finished first in the league this past week with 924 points. So good on you, Chase.
Good use of his three, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, and then Kevin Magnussen, with Kevin Magnussen being his talent driver, so double the points.
Nice.
K-Mag with the double points pulled 242 points for him. So that's and then Haas is his team. But not only having the most amount of points, but in terms of valuation, everybody's team started valued at 100 million, and Chase is now at 105.8 million. So his team value's grown 5.8 million European pounds, British pounds, Euro pounds, however it wants to. It's
Yeah.
pounds.
Those LBs. Yeah. Either way,
Last year it was a running bit of we don't know what a kilometer is. This year it's going to be
it's
what
a
is a pound. Like,
yeah. Yeah. It's better than a couple ounces. But Chase, if you're listening to the podcast, which we hope you are, we hope you're not a bot, because that'd be really shitty because we can't compete with AI. But
yeah,
Chase, if you're listening,
slide up on the, it's like slide up. I'll post the screenshot of the results, and you know what? Reach back out, just swipe up, and just let us know who you are.
Yeah.
I think you're the one. There's 11 of us in the league, and I think you're the one that we don't at least know who it is.
Yeah. Quit sandbagging, you bitch. Fucking
So,
reveal yourself.
Yeah, reveal yourself.
All right. So Chase won, but he wasn't the only winner this week. Yours truly. I mean, this shit's too easy, right?
There we go again.
So as we explained last episode, the points this year, you get 3 points for picking first place correctly. You get 2 points for picking second place correctly, 1 point for picking third place correctly. You can add those up. And I ended up picking Max and Checo correctly. So I got 5 points. And then Pat and Chandler, you both picked Max to win the race correctly. So you both have 3 points. So right now I'm at an early lead. I mean, what are we talking about? You might as well just walk away. But in case you guys decide you still want to compete against me, which you shouldn't, we are going to move into the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So that is this weekend. Qualifying is going to be Friday at noon, and then the race is going to be Saturday at noon. So another Saturday race. Love it, hate it. Not your fucking choice. Watch it. I'm going to go ahead with my pick because I'm the GOAT. I think first place, Max Verstappen. Second place, I'm going to go Carlos Sainz. Third place, I'm going to go Checo. So, Chandler, you got next. Who you got?
All right. So Max is going to win. And I say second is going to be Checo because even though he will not overtake Max, he is still king of the streets. Now he's going to be prince of the streets. But Checo in second. And then I will go with George Russell in third.
Okay. Pat, who you got?
So I'm going to go with Max in first. And then I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc in second. And then I'm going to take Lewis Hamilton coming in third.
What shitty picks? You can get points for third, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just checking. I didn't know if my mic cut out or whatever, but
all right. No, we could hear you, buddy. We could hear you.
All right, everyone. Well, that was figuring out the formula. That was the first race, Bahrain. And stay tuned. We got the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix next week. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll reopen that grid rival. So if you feel like joining, feel like competing against Chase, let's do it. All right. Thanks.